Welcome to Midweek Murders, where we take a look at true crime around Australia. In today's episode, we'll be looking into Western Australia's longest manhunt, spanning 24 years in total. Today, we look into the Claremont Serial Killer. In the late 1990s, the tranquil suburb of Claremont in Perth, Australia, was known for its serene streets and community charm. But beneath this facade of peace, a dark and unsettling mystery was brewing. The disappearances of 3 young women shattered this calm and plunged the city into fear and uncertainty. The Claremont serial killings are among the most infamous and longest-running criminal cases in Australian history, particularly in Western Australia. The case, which involved the abduction and murder of 3 women in the mid-1990s, remained unsolved for over 2 decades, haunting the community and captivating the nation. Sarah Spiers, aged 18, was the first to disappear. She vanished on January 27, 1996. She was last seen in the early hours of the morning after celebrating Australia Day with friends at the Club Bayview in Claremont. She called for a taxi from a phone booth but vanished before it arrived. Her body has never been found, but she is presumed dead. Jane Rimmer was 23 and disappeared on June 9, 1996. She was last seen outside the Continental Hotel in Claremont after a night out with friends. Her body was discovered 55 days later in bushland in Wellard, south of Perth. She had been brutally murdered. Ciara Glennon was 27 and vanished on March 15, 1997. She was last seen walking along Stirling Highway in Claremont after leaving the Continental Hotel. Her body was found 19 days later in bushland near Eglinton, north of Perth. Like Jane Rimmer, she had been violently murdered. The disappearances and murders of these women sent shockwaves through the Perth community, particularly in Claremont, a normally peaceful and affluent suburb. The police launched a massive investigation dubbed the Marco Task Force, which became the largest and most expensive in Western Australian history. However, despite extensive efforts including questioning thousands of people, combing through mountains of evidence and even employing international experts, the case went cold. The lack of solid leads, coupled with the fear that the perpetrator might strike again, left the community in a state of fear and uncertainty for years. For over 20 years, the Claremont serial killings remained one of Australia's most notorious cold cases. Then, in December 2016, a major breakthrough occurred. Advances in DNA technology and forensic science led to the arrest of Bradley Robert Edwards, a former Telstra technician. Edwards had a history of violent behaviour, including a 1988 assault on a woman in her home and a 1995 attack on a young girl in Karrakatta Cemetery, not far from Claremont. DNA from the Karrakatta attack was linked to the murders of Jane Rimmer and Ciara Glennon, leading to Edwards' arrest. Bradley Robert Edwards was charged with the murders of Jane Rimmer and Ciara Glennon and the abduction and presumed murder of Sarah Spiers. His trial began in November 2019 and became one of the most closely watched in Australian history. During the trial, the prosecution presented DNA evidence, fibres from Edwards' work uniform found on the victims, and other circumstantial evidence linking him to the crimes. Edwards pleaded not guilty, but was found guilty of the murders of Jane Rimmer and Ciara Glennon in September 2020. However, due to lack of evidence, he was acquitted of Sarah Spiers' murder. While most of the questions about the young women's deaths were answered, I can't seem to find a reason for why Edwards stopped. Something happened after Ciara's murder, which made him quit hunting. As far as I know, there was never a reason given for why Edwards stopped at 3. It took over 24 years from the first abduction, but the case was finally closed on one of the roughest times in WA history. Our thoughts and prayers go to the victims' families. I do hope they found some degree of closure from the conviction of Edwards. And I hope that he will eventually say where he left Sarah, so her family can get the closure they deserve after so long. Thanks for tuning in to Midweek Murders. I do hope you enjoyed it. There will be links in the description box below if you wish to look more into the case. For Australian listeners, there's a docu-series on 7+ that shows the case if you're interested. Until next week, stay safe.